Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content.
The darkest fears of George of Ravenna have been confirmed. Emperor Justinian II has had his father, along with many other leading citizens of Ravenna, kidnapped and taken off to Constantinople to be tortured and killed. There had been some Ravenati among those people who had deposed Justinian II the first time he was emperor. And Justinian II lives for revenge. This isn't just personal. George knows that the entire city of Ravenna is under threat. He hops on his horse and rides up and down the Adriatic coast, enlisting other towns as allies. But Ravenna itself? Yikes. There's been infighting for years, with entire neighborhoods attacking one another with sticks and stones and slingshots, sometimes even ending in death for the participants. Does George have any hope of uniting this fractious city? He walks into the piazza. Everyone looks serious. George seizes the moment.
People of Ravenna, do you know what that poisonous serpent, Emperor Justinian, is doing to us? Lay aside your quarrel. Take your courage and your strength to defend our walls. Yeah! Prepare your spirits for battle. Defend Ravenna!
Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am joined once again by my co-host, Dr. Pat Larish. Pat, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. There's supposedly a nor'easter coming here tomorrow.
Oh,
but
geez.
You know what? I'm inside. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So,
just to stay warm.
Yeah. it's a little random. Like it's May. Come on.
With snow and everything.
I'm
the
here.
whole.
No.
No, just the
rain.
Because there's like a rain nor'easters and then there's like the snow ones, and so.
No, this is a rain nor'easter. At least I hope it's a rain one. Anyway.
I don't miss those.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay. Well, well, we are. We had to come back and revisit a story that we talked about last week because we did an episode last week on the Byzantine Emperor Justinian II, who is kind of like this famous, just bastard from history, just this miserable, vengeance-driven psycho who, he took over fairly young. He abused his power to his own personal gain. He was overthrown by his enemies who mutilated him by cutting off his nose and slicing his tongue and exiling him to Crimea. But then, while he was in exile, he got a silver plate made, like a silver nose, like mask over his face, kind of some sci-fi like Doctor Doom thing, and then plotted the destruction of his enemies. And he spent, the next 10 years of his life plotting brutal revenge, which he finally got, and just went over the top to, just destroy anybody who had ever wronged him in some of the most horrible ways you can imagine. You guys can go back and listen to if any of that sounds exciting to you, you can go back and listen to the episode. But when we were talking about the episode, Justinian, the thing that makes him badass is his nonstop desire for revenge and at the expense of all other things. But just, it's the kind of the Moby Dick thing, I guess, of, this didn't really make him a good leader. Being single-mindedly driven by revenge did not necessarily make him a good or successful king or someone who
makes him interesting.
It makes him interesting, makes him badass, but badass is not necessarily always a compliment. And it did not make him beloved by the people that he was ruling in many cases.
No. Yeah.
So one thing that came up when we were telling that story was that, Pat, you came up with this great story and we wanted to tell it in the episode. But as we were going through the episode, we realized that we were like, we were a little short on time, and this was such a good story that we didn't want to rush through it at the end of the Justinian episode. And we didn't really want to do it as a two-parter because while he's in it, he's kind of the villain of this story. So,
yes. Yeah.
So you're going to tell the story this week of the people who brought this guy down.
Yes. Oh, I am so glad we have the opportunity to do this. So Justinian, okay, if you're going to stand up to someone as badass and ruthless as Emperor Justinian II, you have to be pretty badass yourself. And in particular, so Ben, you said he's totally bent on revenge. Mm-hmm. And he seemed to think that the people of Ravenna in Italy had wronged him.
I mean, he went out of his way. There was he was overthrown by a usurper who was then later overthrown and exiled. And when Justinian took back over, he went out and found that guy in his exile to bring him back, to be like, you wronged me, even though bad things have already happened to you. They weren't done to you by me. So now I need to get you. And Ravenna was a pretty powerful city in the empire at this time. And they didn't like him. And he remembered that.
Yeah. So Justinian sends a guy. Now, this is during Justinian's...
Actually, we should do a break before that. So let me transition that into that first break.
Which makes sense because Justinian had his first emperorship, and then he was not emperor. He had a little break. So after the break, Justinian II will return as emperor.
I like that. I don't think I can improve upon that.
Okay. Well, thank you. So Justinian, despite everything, manages to be emperor for the second time. And now we're going to tell you about what he does and how people stand up to him.
Yes. I mean, he takes over, he recruits the Bulgars and goes in through the aqueducts, into the city in the middle of the night, and he just kills everybody. He has everybody wrong. They get tied up in bags and thrown into the river, and he's just putting out people's eyes and all kinds of stuff all over the place. And then he goes back to building statues of himself and things. And he's not winning any wars. He's not He's not
winning any friends.
Not winning any friends. This is not what was the phrase you just said while we were talking before the episode? He's
not kind and curious.
He's not kind and curious.
Yeah, sorry, I have to context for our listeners. This is something we try to encourage our students to be where I teach. And these are values I endorse. Yes. And Justinian does not necessarily exemplify these values. He might be curious, hey, are there new ways I can put down the people I don't like?
Yeah, can I find a more violent... Can I keep this guy alive just a little bit longer to do more terrible things to him?
Yeah. So, yeah.
But we're not talking about him. We're talking about... He's the bad guy of this story now, because we've told his story, and his story ends badly. And this is the story of the people who defeated him. And so, Pat, you said it was Ravenna in northern Italy.
Yeah. Now, I have to say, the source I'm using is the historical source I'm using is the Book of Pontiffs of the Church of Ravenna by Andreas Agnellis. And so, obviously, with a title like that, it's going to be pro-Ravenna. And it's going to make the church leaders of Ravenna look good. So I'm just saying, okay, maybe there's a little bit of a slant here. Fine. I'm just going to roll with it.
That's probably an easy sell with this guy.
Oh, yeah. And as far as modern historians go, I'm relying on Judith Heron's book about Ravenna, published in 2020. So anyway, if you're going to stand up to someone as badass and ruthless as Emperor Justinian II, you have to be pretty badass yourself. So Justinian decides that he doesn't like Ravenna. So he sends a guy, a trusted commander, by the name of John Rhizocopos. And I'm using the English version of his name, John Rhizocopos, but it's Johannes.
It sounds extremely Greek.
Yes. Well, yeah. So a lot of the names in the Byzantine world can easily be anglicized, turned into English names, because they're names like, John or Michael or George. Maybe not Ringo, but, And so it might be a little unsettling. These names sound so modern, but, these are names. So Ioannis Rhizocopos or John Rhizocopos.
And for reference here, we're looking at like the year like 710, 711, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. John Rizikopos sails with forces en route to Ravenna. Justinian tells John Rizikopos, to, when you get to Ravenna, be all nicey nice on the outside, but, quote, in their eyes, be friendly, in your heart, be an enemy.
That's very Justinian.
Oh, it's very Justinian. Yeah. So Rizikopos sails to Ravenna. Along the way, he stops at Naples and just happens to cut the throat of a few papal officials. He's a nice guy, right?
Well, the Justinian had the patriarch of the Orthodox Church thrown in prison for disagreeing with him on religious matters once. So I'm sure he didn't have a lot of love for the Pope. Although I feel like just assaulting papal officials is bad.
Yeah. It's all in a day's work. Anyway, so John Rizikopos gets to Ravenna, and there so he was supposed to be all nice on the outside. He sets up a reception area in a field. I'm getting picnic vibes from this. He invites the nobles of Ravenna for a meet and greet. Cool, right?
Yeah, okay. Justinian Palooza.
Yeah, I like that. And so the nobles go home. It's we met Justinian's guy. His name is John something. He seems cool. We had hors d'oeuvres or coleslaw, I don't know, whatever you had at picnics in Ravenna in the 8th century. But then, he has this nicey nice start. Overnight, he sets up hangings. I imagine this is probably some sort of tapestry or textile fence around the picnic area.
Not hangings, like curtains. Not he hung people overnight. Not people.
He hung people. No, people hung stuff overnight.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I realize the word hangings is ambiguous. No, he put
with
up,
Justinian, you can never be sure.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So he put up, things that are functioning like tarps, but they were probably more like textiles, tapestries. And so there's this opaque fence around the picnic area. Okay. Anyway, I'm picturing kind of what you sometimes see around construction sites. They have a fence and it's got stuff around it. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, hard hat must be wearing in this area.
Yeah. And sometimes it's got pictures of what the new site will look like. Yeah. Anyway, whatever.
I feel like this could only if we're going to stick with the Lollapalooza reference, the ads, they hang, the beer ads and things up there. You see this all the time. I feel like this doesn't hurt the vibe of this being some kind of Emperor Justinian festival.
Yeah, maybe gives it a little air of exclusivity, ooh, going to the VIP area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so he invites the nobles of Ravenna back again, and they show up. They're ready to network. They're ready to, I don't know, party, whatever. And Rizikopos has a little system and all. He invites the nobles to meet with him 2 at a time, but...
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yes. So as each pair of nobles comes up to meet Rizikopos, he has his guys grab them, shove wooden wedges in their mouths, ties them up, and throws them into the hold of the ship that he sailed in on.
Whoa. Okay. What? Shoved wooden wedges in their mouths?
That's a detail from my source.
Is this an 8th century ball gag so they don't yell?
I guess. Actually, that might be it, because this is happening in secret.
Yeah.
So, this is happening behind these tarps, behind the fenced off area.
I feel like it's the only way to get a bunch of nobles to line up 2 by 2 and go behind a curtain, and then nobody comes back out the other side.
Yeah. So it takes a while. There's this period of time where the families of these nobles don't really know what's going on. My husband is late from that networking event. He's probably making good contacts.
Yeah, or just, have a little too much wine or something, right?
The 2 of these might both be true. Yeah. So people are I'm sure they're adding each other to their LinkedIn profiles. And then, So that's going on. The nobles of Ravenna are getting thrown 2 by 2 into the ship. And then Rizikopos also
like a terrible Noah's Ark.
Sorry. Yeah. It's like, yeah. This is totally twisted. Yeah, totally cursed. Yeah. And Rizikopos also manages to get the bishop of Ravenna, Bishop Felix, to come in and see him, and also another guy named Johannicus, who is a respected citizen, described as most wise by my source. He's an important scribe. Side note, ChatGPT and I got into an argument as to whether Johannicus was portrayed positively or negatively in our sources. I maintain that Johannicus is portrayed positively, in part because he's described as most wise. Anyway, neener, ChatGPT. I don't usually use ChatGPT, but for some reason I was inspired to ask a few questions. Anyway.
I feel like these days you can just be like, make a badass of the week article on this guy and it'll just pull the stuff off my website and make it for you.
Yeah. No, I did use ChatGPT at the very, very, very beginning to say, hey, what are the important historical sources, primary sources? Because I feel like I was new to this, but then once I got my list, I was like, okay, I'll look up the ones that I can look up and then I can do my own research after that. Why did I ask ChatGPT about Johannicus? I think because there was a moment in my process where I just sort of like totally spaced out on like what exactly his role was in Ravenna. He's a scribe. I think he's thought of very highly by the people of Ravenna. So Bishop Felix is also invited to meet Rizikopos, the scribe Johannicus. I say scribe, but he's apparently very respected, he has a very high status, and some other citizens of Ravenna. And so not Bishop Felix and not Johannicus, but the other people who got this other wave of invitations. Well, Rizikopos' soldiers lit a fire under them. And I don't mean like figuratively, like, hey, get up and get out there, buddy. No, I mean like a fire, like, with burning.
Like they set them on fire?
Yes. So, okay, it's hard to keep something like this completely secret. So the people of Ravenna find out. Was there rioting? Oh, yes, there was rioting. According to Agnellus, my source, their roar went up into the sky. There was a great noise everywhere. All were prostrate on the ground. I'm not sure why we're shouting and also being prostrate on the ground, but whatever.
I feel like that would be muffled. I feel like shouting into the ground isn't as useful as shouting into the air.
I don't know. But Agnellus says, even the earth groaned at their sounds. Okay. Now.
Because they were yelling at it.
Yeah. So, yeah. Now, here's the thing. I want to kind of back up a little bit or kind of zoom out a little bit to talk about what is life like in Ravenna if you ignore Justinian's guys? Like, what was life like in Ravenna before Justinian's guys show up and cause problems? Well, Ravenna, Ravenna's a lovely place, but it's not all sunshine and cupcakes. So there's actually there had been a lot of internal strife among the Ravenati. There's feuding, there's rivalry. It gets divided along neighborhood lines. So you have rivalry between the people of this neighborhood versus the people of that neighborhood. And, okay, this is remarkably specific, but this is in my source, so I'm going to just tell you. And apparently every Sunday, and why Sunday? Well, I guess it's a day of rest, or at least you're not working. Certain groups of citizens, like from this neighborhood and that neighborhood, would fight each other. And not like a friendly softball match. This was actually fighting, like apparently in a very no-holds-barred kind of way. So it was people of all ages. It wasn't just a bunch of like bored teenagers working off steam. It included the elderly. It included children, according to my source, women, men. They threw rocks. They used slingshots. They beat each other with sticks.
Have you ever seen Calcio Storico? It's in, I want to say Florence. has a sport, and I think they might do it. I don't know if they do it, if there's a regular season for this or if it's just like a once a year kind of thing. But the four corners of Florence get together and have a tournament where they play this sport. And the idea is to get a ball into a goal. You can just run and hold the ball. You don't have to dribble it or any of that stuff. And you throw it.
So it's not like soccer.
No, you don't kick it. You pick up the ball and run it and throw it into a goal. But you have like, I don't know, 12 people on either side of in either team, and just everybody, it's like completely legal to just beat each other up. And so in Calcio Storico, it's just a bunch of guys beating each other up, and every once in a while, one of them picks up a ball and throws it. And it's just like, it's a sport, and they still play it to this day. But that's what this makes me think of. It's just like, well, it's Sunday. It's time for us to all get together on the subway and hit each other with chains.
Yeah. No, we do not actually endorse hitting other people with chains.
I love that this is an organized thing in this town, but you know what? That makes them really well equipped to do some rioting.
Well, yes. But on the other hand, this is a really deep-seated rivalry. And it's not just picking up a ball and then maybe punching the other guy. It's like, slingshots, rocks, sticks, there's potential for real damage here. And apparently there was a moment where the people of one neighborhood actually took this to the next level, and they invited, individual members of the one neighborhood sent out individual invitations to individuals from the other neighborhood, inviting them to a reconciliation luncheon or something. Okay. And
hey, Jim, do you want to come over to my house?
Yeah.
And they all did it
individually. Yeah. So you have these one-on-ones, and they killed them.
Wow. Why?
Yeah. Because I guess this was the rivalry. And so the bishop at the time, Bishop Damien, had to step in and basically intervene and kind of say, okay.
You guys need sports. You need some sort of athletic competition. You need soccer hooliganism to get this energy out.
Yes.
At least focus it a little bit.
Yeah. So yes. So all of this is, besides fascinating in its own right, is also the background against which what I'm about to tell you is happening. So you have these rivalries among the neighborhood, and these are really acerbic rivalries, right? But it's one thing to be, have a weird rivalry with the next neighborhood over, but if you have a common enemy, do you unite against the common enemy? And who is that common enemy?
John Davalina. What's his name? John
Rizakapas.
John Rizakapas.
Yep. John Rizakapas. It's got a
nice song to it. There's a nice ring to the John Rizakapas.
Yeah, it literally means root cutter. Because maybe someone in his family was a pharmacist who would go out and cut up herbs and stuff. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, so these are the Ravenati, and Ben, in some earlier episode, you said it's hard even getting a handful of friends together organized for a D&D night or something. Mm-hmm. Okay, and instead, take this to several orders of magnitude bigger. We're trying to get the people of Ravenna organized against John Rizakapas. So the Ravenati, they get this guy named Georgios, or George, and he's got motive. He's the son of one of the Ravenati who had been taken away on that ship.
And set on fire.
Set on fire and or had a wooden wedge put in his mouth. There are several waves of bad things happening to the Ravenati. So his father is, I believe, potentially still alive because he was on the ship being taken off to Constantinople. So he wasn't set on fire in Ravenna. There's at least a chance that he's still alive.
Okay.
So the Ravenati, they select Georgios, to be their leader. And to protect against any future threats. And he manages to go around and, so outside of Ravenna, he goes to neighboring towns and says, hey, there's this threat. We need to band together. And so he gets the neighboring towns to ally together. And then within the city of Ravenna himself, and Ravenna, of course, it's this hotbed of neighborhood on neighborhood violence, he says to the citizens, oh, hey, I know we have a lot of internal quarrels amongst ourselves, but we are all Ravenati. Let's band together. Let's get organized.
Let's take a hiatus from the Sunday beat each other up festival. We'll just put that on hold for the summer.
Yes.
We can go back to throwing rocks at old ladies in November.
Yes. Now, to be fair, the old ladies might be the ones throwing the rocks also.
Yeah, so you got to get them. You can't just sit there and let them throw rocks at you.
Yeah. But as you pointed out, Ben, the citizens apparently have a lot of rock throwing experience. Let's leverage this.
I'm just picturing like a murderer's row here of just like, this is like Ravenati District 9, and they're all like, everybody's got face scars and like missing an eye. I was burned horribly when my neighbor threw acid in my face.
Yeah. And, you've got your, I don't know, you picture your grandmother, your nonna in the kitchen, she's stirring the risotto. And then, it's Sunday. Okay, time to throw rocks.
She's stirring the risotto, but she's got a second pot on the stove that's just boiling water that she's going to throw at somebody.
Hey, be resourceful, yeah? So George, he says, Ravenati, we got to come together. But also, sometimes it's useful, when you're organized, it's sometimes useful to have subdivisions within your group. And hey, guess what? We have subdivisions already there. So he divides the city into 11 divisions by neighborhood, but these are divisions that are kind of already there. So it's like, hey, people of this neighborhood, you're a group and you're a subdivision, and people of this neighborhood, you're a subdivision. And so each neighborhood can provide militia, they can provide other forms of assistance. He's got people doing all sorts of things. And he's got 11 neighborhood divisions, and then he's also got a 12th division, which is the church, who I would hope had not been involved in the Sunday fighting, but you never know. I don't know.
It's like the end of Shaun of the Dead, or not Shaun of the Dead, it's like the end of Hot Fuzz, if you ever saw that, where all those people of the town just show up and they're all killing each other. Oh man, yeah. This is who knows, right? It's entirely possible that there were some rowdy bishops involved here, some rowdy, at least deacons, lower members of the clergy.
Possibly, yeah.
Pull the collar off for a minute because gotta get the nunchucks out, whack my neighbor in the face with them for no reason, no good reason.
Yeah. And
what happens if property taxes go up and you got to move to a different neighborhood? Do you just leave town?
I don't think that. No, I think you'd work it out internally somehow. I'm not an expert on this, but Judith Heron, who is an expert, she sees this as a precursor to the way a lot of a little bit down the line, this is a precursor to the way a lot of medieval Italian towns were governed in the medieval era. So,
it's kind of what we still do. Like,
yeah,
we still have legislative districts and counties and things like that.
So they rise up. Now, how do they get rid of Rizakopos? Well, I'm afraid I have to be vague on this because our sources are vague. And maybe they're deliberately vague. They just say, by God's judgment on his atrocious deeds, John Rizakopos died an ignominious death. You are free to speculate on what that means.
They released the soccer hooligans, and that was just the end of this guy. Like, nobody really knows how he died because so many people were hitting him with sticks at the same time that it was impossible to get a good view of what happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so John Rizakopos is down, and the people of Ravenna, despite all of their hatred for each other, have organized and united other towns. And now what? Now what's going to happen?
Well, we'll tell you after the break. welcome back. So we told you about how the people of Ravenna, under the leadership of George, or Georgios, banded together despite their internal differences and got rid of Justinian's commander, John Rizikopos. From that point of view, the people of Ravenna are actually doing okay now. But I wanted to tell you about some specific individuals because I think their stories are just so interesting and actually kind of badass. So may I do that?
Yes, let's do it. I love stories of individual badassery.
Okay. So I mentioned the scribe Johannicus and Bishop Felix, who were yoinked by Rizikopos' guys and put on the ship to go to Constantinople. So imagine yourself on that ship going back to Constantinople, and back in Ravenna, there's rioting and chaos and mayhem, and people actually kind of getting organized and getting rid of Rizikopos. But Bishop Felix and Johannicus, they're not the only Ravenati on the ship, but one way or another, they get a little bit of special attention. I don't mean good treatment, just special treatment.
Yeah.
So the ship, gets to Constantinople, and Johannicus is brought in. Okay, whatever. And then Bishop Felix is brought in, and somehow a noble youth appears unto Justinian. And the noble youth says, you tell me, what is this? Is it a vision? Is it a mushroom trip? I don't know.
What does he say?
He says to Justinian, "Spare this one man, the bishop."
Because we've seen this happen to Justinian before. So he was sailing when he fled, when he was leaving exile. He was caught in a storm. He was traveling on a boat with some of his loyal followers, and he was trapped on this storm, and the ship was getting blown all around, and there was some concern that maybe the ship was going to sink and everybody was going to die. And one of the crew members, who had been a loyal Justinian guy, came to him and said, this is God being angry with you for wanting revenge so bad. Maybe if you promised God you would spare the lives of the people who wronged you, he wouldn't destroy the ship and kill us all. And Justinian's response was, if I spare a single one of these people, I hope he kills all of us right now. I'd rather just be dead right now than to spare a single person who wronged me. So
okay, so he doubles down.
Mm-hmm, yeah, he doubles down. Is that what happens here?
Well, okay, so
because now he's back in charge, and he didn't. This guy didn't really personally wrong him, so. Yeah, maybe he can.
Yeah. So that's an earlier story of how Justinian responds to, portents or religious injunctions or something. So, so now we're in, it's 710, 711. Wait. So Justinian is looking at Bishop Felix, and the words of the noble youth who appeared unto him are ringing in his ears. And so Justinian decides, I can't really argue with a mysterious apparition of a noble youth, right? I'm not going to kill this guy. So he does not kill Bishop Felix.
Oh, wow. This is growth.
You know where this is going. Instead, Justinian gets his guys to pour really strong vinegar onto a shiny silver platter. And then they heat up the platter. And then the fumes from the vinegar are rising up. And Justinian's guys force Bishop Felix to stare into the vinegar, and the fumes destroy his eyes.
Oh, man.
Yeah. That's horrible, right?
That's awful.
Bishop Felix is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So Justinian was following instructions from the noble youth.
Yeah. He probably had the noble youth executed after that, I bet.
Well, okay, I'm picturing the noble youth as an apparition that you couldn't really lay your hands on, you know?
I see, yeah.
So I at least that's the story I'm telling myself,
Yeah.
So that silver platter is the last thing Bishop Felix ever sees. And he lives, but his eyes are forevermore out of commission.
Dang.
Yeah, dang. Yeah.
He arrested the patriarch. He blinding bishops. He's this guy is like a real jerk.
He's a total jerk. Yeah. Yeah. In contrast, we have Johannicus, who's described as very wise. And Johannicus is brought before Justinian. And Justinian says, "Oh, is this indeed Johannicus the scribe?" And Johannicus says, "Yes, sire, it is I." And alas, there's no noble youth appearing unto Justinian to intercede on behalf of Johannicus. And so Justinian says, "Neener, neener." I mean, he doesn't say "neener, neener." He says whatever the ancient, what the Byzantine Greek version is. He says, "Oh, you're a scribe." So he pushes reeds, which you would use for pens, under Johannicus's fingers, under his fingernails.
Like that bamboo torture from the Japanese would do during World War II. Yeah.
Fingernail.
Bloody, gross. Yeah. Miserable.
Yeah.
Oh,
So Johannicus, So Johannicus is not having a good day, and maybe his fine motor coordination in his fingers is maybe not at its best. And then Justinian has parchment and an actual reed pen brought to Johannicus. And
right now. Let's see what you can write with all these pens stuck in your hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can imagine Justinian saying something like, "Oh, hey, now you have to write a loyalty oath or whatever." And what does Johannicus actually write? Now, this is Johannicus. His fingernails have just had reeds shoved under them, and they're bleeding. Things are not comfortable. And he takes the reed pen and he dips it in, not ink, but... What do you think?
The blood from his fingers with the reed sticking out of him. Gosh, this is like a horror movie. This is like a Saw movie.
Yeah. Oof, yeah. And Johannicus, he writes, he's probably like staring Justinian in the eyes. I'm going to write this. He says, he writes painfully in his own blood, "Lord, free me from my enemies, my God, and from the hand of this wicked emperor." And he takes the parchment, which he has written in his own blood, and he throws it in Justinian's face and says, "Oh, take this, most wicked emperor, and satiate yourself with my blood."
Oh, man. And then Justinian looks at it and he's just drawn a penis.
Oh.
Man, that's awesome. Johannicus. Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. There's not too many stories about writers being badass, and so I'm very happy when I encounter one. Yes.
A humble scribe.
Humble scribe. Yes.
Yeah.
They're almost always end in like torture and death, but like that's pretty. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Johannicus figures, okay, he knows that this is going to end badly, so he might as well make the most of it. So, and then Johannicus throws the parchment into Justinian's face, and then Justinian says, "Oh, what are you doing, you who are about to die? Your audacity shall perish." And I, here in, May 2025, would like to say that we are telling the story almost a millennium and a half later, so Johannicus's audacity did not, in fact, die.
That's a good point. He's still audacious. However, after all of these centuries.
Yes. His audacity lives on, but his mortal body, I'm afraid, did not. Justinian had him crushed between two rocks.
Well, I mean, at least he gave up on, he resisted long enough that Justinian gave up on the, irony or the, semi-related torture. Just just squish him with a rock,
Yeah. Yep.
Dang, Johannicus is awesome. That's a crazy story.
Yeah. So, and before Johannicus dies, he says, okay, how does he know this? I have no idea. Maybe a noble youth appeared to him. I don't know. Or maybe he's just bluffing. But anyway, Johannicus, before he dies, he says, these are his dying words. "Yeah, so maybe I'm dying today, but tomorrow, y'all?" And he's addressing Justinian's henchmen. Maybe he's addressing the people of Constantinople in general, rhetorically. "Y'all will, because tomorrow y'all will kill Justinian."
Okay.
And in fact, the people of Constantinople did rise up and overthrow Justinian, and they cut off his head.
Huh.
And they put it in a sack. The head in a sack goes on tour. So,
they did this with Vlad the Impaler. He was so horrible that they transported his severed head around the Ottoman, or I guess it was the Ottoman Empire to display, to be like, look, he's really dead. He's not coming back. And I mean, you can talk about Johannicus and his setup where it's like, he dies defiantly, but those last words are pretty amazing because that doesn't do a lot to inspire the loyalty of the people in that room to be like, this guy is in charge of our empire. Do we really want this guy making decisions on taxes and war and, policy or do I want him to make any decisions about my life whatsoever when he is just willing to torture this guy in such a gruesome way, so horribly until death? I could totally see why that would be a thing that would be inspiring to the, maybe not inspiring, but just so depressing to the people there. They'd be like, we got to do something about this guy. He's crazy. Everybody who in that room who witnessed that had to be like, this guy's nuts. We got to take care of him.
Yeah, and this is spoken by the guy who threw the parchment in Justinian's face.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So he's got a vibe.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like it.
He's got energy.
I like it. If you're gonna get crushed to death by two rocks, you might as well do something badass before it happens to you.
Go for it. Yeah.
So the head goes on tour. They take Justinian, and it's a very distinctive head because he's got that silver nose and the slash face and the slash tongue and all that.
So they bring the head to Rome, they display it there, they bring it to Ravenna, and they display it there. And in Ravenna is Johannicus' sister. And she is understandably very upset about what happened to her brother. And she's just weary, she's tired of everything. But then she hears the announcement, oh, hey, later today we're going to have a parade featuring the head of Justinian II, not connected to his body.
We're going to parade the head around at the end. We'll have coffee and donuts. Then we'll beat the hell out of each other again. It'll be an awesome Sunday, and then we'll go to mass.
Yeah. So so she's like, okay. So I want to see this. So she goes up to her upstairs window so she can get a really good, I guess her apartment or her house is on the parade route, and so they're carrying the head of Justinian around on a stick, and they pass by her house and she calls out to the person carrying the head on a stick, hey, could you stop for a moment? And they're like, yeah. So they stop for a moment, they linger. She gazes upon the head of Justinian II, the guy who killed her brother and terrorized her fellow Ravenati. And she tears up, her eyes are welling up with tears. She gives thanks to God that her brother's murder is avenged. She's received closure. She collapses and dies.
Whoa.
But she dies knowing that her brother has been avenged.
Just drops dead of happiness or something.
Or relief, just like, whew, this is over.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but the mental image I have is when we read those Jengar things and it just bursts the gallbladder of a leopard in the savannah or something.
Yeah. Someone who's really tough and holding it together, and then all of a sudden just bam.
Dang.
Yeah. Can I tell a little bit about Johannicus earlier, before this whole business with Rizikopos goes down?
Sure. Let's do it. I like this guy. I definitely am interested in knowing more about him.
Okay, so a little bit of character development, flashback lore about Johannicus. So apparently, before the whole Rizikopos comes in and behaves badly on behalf of Justinian II, Johannicus is a scribe, and he's doing his things. But then some other guy, he's a notary named Hilarus. He notices that Johannicus keeps an odd schedule. Like, why was Johannicus staying out so late? That's weird. Is he was he involved in sketchy dealings with the exarch? What was going on? Was he consorting with ladies of the night? Who knows? What was his deal? So the notary snoops on Johannicus and he tails him. And here's what he sees. After nightfall, Johannicus goes up to the doors of the church, and the doors open of their own accord. This is what my sources say. It must be true. Johannicus goes in, and he prays for a long time. And then he leaves, and the doors close behind him, again of their own accord. Okay, so Hilarus, the nosy notary, follows Johannicus again on another day. And it's winter. It's cold out. Johannicus passes by a beggar on the street who is sick. And Johannicus goes to his usual place for dinner. He asks for a nice meal. But then he pretends to be coming down with something like a cold or something. I don't know. He lost his appetite. I don't know. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's a nice dinner. But can you put it in a doggy bag for me? Could you wrap it up? And then, this is Johannicus. What do you think he does with that dinner in the doggy bag?
Brings it to the guy.
He brings it to the guy, yeah.
So this is the guy that ChatGPT said was portrayed unfavorably?
Yeah, I don't know.
This is why AI sucks. This is why I hate AI.
Yeah. Go home, ChatGPT.
Don't look at that stuff anymore. It's not good for you.
Yeah.
But okay, so there's one more thread that we have to close out here because Justinian's dead. John Topopopoulos, what's his name?
Rizikopoulos.
John Rizikopoulos is dead. And Johannicus is dead. But Justinian II is dead and his head's been cut off and it's being paraded through the streets of Ravenna and everybody's super happy about it. But we have this Bishop Felix guy that we talked about earlier who's been blinded by vinegar. What happens with him?
What happens with him? Okay, so not only was he blinded with vinegar, but he was also, Justinian couldn't kill him, of course, because the noble youth said don't. But he blinded him and also exiled him to Kherson, because that's apparently where people get exiled to.
Yeah, that's where Justinian was exiled to. When he came back into power, he burned the town to the ground and sold everybody into slavery. So I imagine at the time that he's exiling Felix there, it's basically a penal colony at this point. There's not much else there.
Yeah. So Bishop Felix, he could just give up, but he continues. It sounds like he continues to be a force working for the best interests of Ravenna. So now, some scholars are a little skeptic about the story that I'm about to tell, but according to our sources, this happened. And you know what? I'm just going to tell the story.
Yeah, just do it.
So, the story, and this is the history of the pontiffs of the Church of Ravenna by Agnellus. Anyway, the story goes that Bishop Felix of Ravenna, he's in exile in Kherson, but he's then approached by the new emperor, Philippikos, summoned to Constantinople. And the new emperor says to Bishop Felix, return to your land and your see. I mean, see in the sense of the domain that a bishop...
He wasn't giving him a hard time.
Yeah.
I think that's a good move by the new emperor, right? Because they kill they don't just kill Justinian. They kill Justinian and anybody that's related to him. Everybody's dead. They got to kill that entire line. Mm-hmm. And so Philippikos takes over, and it is really a bad look to be blinding priests and stuff. And so I think it's probably a good PR move by this guy to be like, hey, sorry, buddy.
Yeah. Now, Felix says, Your Majesty or Your Eminence or however you address an emperor, thank you, but where shall I go and what shall I do? I can't see. And also, all the treasures of my church back in Ravenna were looted. Oh, and this is stuff that your predecessors, these were treasures that your predecessors, not Justinian, but earlier guys.
Emperors, yeah.
Yeah, faithful princes had generously donated to our church. But now all that's left are the walls. Hint, hint. So the emperor, Philippikos, says, golly, Bishop Felix, who took away these treasures? Please take them from our property if you need to. And so then the emperor sent a herald around Constantinople to say, hey, if any of you have stuff from the Church of Ravenna that you, took away temporarily for safekeeping or something, could you be a good sport and return it? And according to the story,
that's a clever approach. Like, if it ended up in your possession somehow, let's just bring it back. You'd be doing me a favor.
There's a lot of chaos. Things got shuffled around, and according to the story, as reported by Agnellus, people stepped up. They returned vases, tapestries, all sorts of beautiful ornaments. Wow. And supposedly everything that was had gone missing from the church in Ravenna was returned except for just one candelabrum. And I think in the grand scheme of things, that's, okay.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. And then Emperor Philippicus says to Felix, oh, please, accept a gift from the imperial palace on top of all of the stuff being returned.
So sorry that the emperor has burned your city to the ground for no good reason and threw everybody into a boat and set it on fire.
With wooden wedges in their mouth. Mm-hmm. And Bishop Felix says, oh, Your Majesty, you have been more than generous, but if you do wish to offer a gift to the church, well, I did happen to hear about some beautiful crystalline gems in your treasury, which would be most beautiful for the adornment of our church. And so this is how Bishop Felix, who, remember, can't actually enjoy the glitter of these crystalline gems.
That's right.
Because he's blind. But on behalf of the people of Ravenna, he manages to restore not only the original treasures of the church, ornaments of the church, but also some extra bling for the glory of the church and the delight of his townspeople.
Wow. And that is how Ravenna participated, at least began the revolution. And so the revolution spreads and things. So we have Philippicus and Bishop Felix getting captured and they're taken away and bad things happen to them. But while they're gone, this guy George organizes Ravenna, organizes the rest of northern Italy. They rise up against the Byzantine emperor, but that is kind of the beginning of the rebellion that eventually spreads. By the time Johannicus is killed, that revolution has almost entirely spread to Constantinople, and it begins with his capture and it ends basically around the time of his death. And then in the end, Ravenna gets rebuilt. The damage is restored. All of the things that have been plundered, a lot of them by Byzantine soldiers who sacked the city, maybe, but a lot of it gets returned, and Bishop Felix returns home, and now they've kind of this one town has found a way to overcome their Sunday punching festivals and unite to overthrow this like cruel tyrant and restore Philippicus, who seems, at least from this story, like not nearly as bad as Justinian.
To be fair, it's a low bar.
It's a low bar, yeah. And just to remind everybody, it's Justinian II, not Justinian I. Justinian I is the good one. Justinian II is the bad one. Maybe should have been more explicit with that at the beginning, but
we can, Justinian II.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah. I'm glad that we told that story, and I'm glad that we were able to give it justice.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Because when we started to get into it last week as part of our show, we ended up cutting the segment because I was like, this is going to go for too long. This is maybe a whole episode.
Yeah, there's so much more to say.
Yeah. And that's great. So Pat, thank you so much for
thank you,
putting all this together and for sharing the story with us, because it is definitely badass, and it's a very fun thing that we were just able to do, which is to take a badass one week and then make him the villain the week after.
Yeah,
we get to do that very often, but it's pretty cool. So, okay, well, thank you, and thanks to all of you for listening. This has been another Badass of the Week, and we love doing these. We love bringing them to you. We hope you guys enjoy them too. If you do, please let us know. And we will see you next week with another story.
Stay badass.
Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content. Executive producers are me, Ben Thompson, Dr. Patricia Larish, and Andrew Jacobs. Writing is by me and Pat. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Mixing and music and sound design by Jude Brewer. Special thanks to Noel Brown at iHeartRadio. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, and tell your friends and tell your enemies. And please leave us a rating. We'll be back next week with another one.